Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank Sanishi. He's David Morassutti. You can find him on sportsnet.com or .ca, sorry. And, of course, anyway.
I've never checked to see what happens if what happens if you click sportsnet.com? It probably just goes to .ca, maybe. Oh, nope. It just doesn't load. Interesting.
So it's not a real place. So
it doesn't exist. So if somebody's looking for a website, sportsnet.com might be available.
There you go. Maybe we'll put the show on sportsnet.com. So it's another week of football. I got to say, more and more impressed as the season goes on. I want to start with this play because probably one of the best plays. It'll be one of the best plays this year. It'll be one of the best catches probably of the year. And it's not unique. That's the thing about it. Carter did this before in college. So it's a go-to move by him. So why don't we have a look at it and decide for ourselves how good it is.
Love the music.
Thanks to the CFL for that, and pretty much a play that was pretty good from a lot of different angles in the stadium. I think, David, an amazing play on his part, and they also played during the broadcast. They showed the catch that he made in college.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the best interception I've ever seen. Like if I'm being honest, probably one of the nicest catches I've ever seen. But the fact that it was an interception just plays that much higher. Like the ability to do it one-handed, to time it perfectly in that situation. Now like that ball was never going to get caught by the receiver. That ball was purely, I think it was just meant to be intercepted. And it was a big play in the game, or it should have been a bigger play in that game, if we're being honest.
Yeah,
right?
It's too bad. It's too bad it didn't come in a victory. Yeah. Absolutely. It almost looked like he backhanded the ball. Like it was better than his college interception. The college interception, he liked it better. I think that might have something to do with it being the first one, I guess. Well, you know what? I'm just getting inside his brain. It's a pro interception. Canadian Football League. An American kid maybe doesn't look at the Canadian Football League the way maybe people like us look at the Canadian Football League. So maybe the luster or the shine isn't there as bright. But I can tell you, for CFL fans, CFL commentators, and people who question the quality of the players in the Canadian Football League, David, I think that kind of shines a little light on the kind of talent that is in the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, I mean, look at his age, right? It's a bit of the. I mean, he did go to college, so that I do think that's at least something a little different than the Qantas Stiggers situation. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those plays where it puts a player on the map a little bit more too. You know, at just 22 years old, right? Seeing him make a play like that's a mature play. I guess it's just such a dynamic play.
He's too young to know you can't make that play, David.
This is true.
I'm not trying to degrade what he did, but you know, it's that youthful exuberance and that.
The other reason, go ahead, Frank.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
So the other reason why he said that catch is better is because he had a broken hand.
Yes.
Right. Like, so he puts a little more emphasis on, but yeah, it's just crazy.
Great play, best play of the week, and maybe the best play of the year. And I said a long time ago when they changed the rules and they made it more difficult for defenders, and I'll use the word cheat, right? Like push players, hold players, bump them extra time, and they used to get away with that. Well, the league decided pass interference is a thing, and it's a thing they wanted to eliminate and not necessarily level the playing field, because at the time, David, most people said, well, this just ruins defense. A defense not going to stand a chance. This is terrible. This takes the game away from defense, and receivers are going to score at will. And I said back then, and I still believe it, and now I feel comforted in seeing catches like this, the many plays that we see defensively, where in fact the talent of a defender can be exposed almost easily. Like, this play wasn't easy, but the opportunity to show the kind of physical talent that defenders have beyond just holding a guy and shoving a guy and banging a guy when he's not supposed to. I felt in my heart this was going to happen, and sure enough, it happens more often than not. The excitement level of defense now has gone to the point where the talent of the player on the defense is more important than the shiftiness or the sneakiness or the opportunity to basically bend the rules. Now it's on them, and they've risen to the occasion. Defenders have risen to the occasion.
Yeah, right. And you know, it's not common that you see, you know, Frank, you and I went through this when the Argos had stickers. They don't trust younger players right away. It takes time for those young players to earn a coach's trust. Right. And so the fact that the BC Lions not only signed this player, but also are putting him in that position right off the hop, that says something about the maturity that Robert Carter Jr. has, but also how big he is as a player.
And as well, David, in reality, I think this is something that he's proof of the message from the owner to make the games exciting and engage the fans more directly. This is an example of that, in my opinion. And the reason I say that is he brings big rock bands to come watch the game, and that act supersedes anything that was going on before he owned the BC Lions, in my opinion. and he wants to generate excitement. We've heard him talk a few times, David. We were in the same room with him listening to what he's had to say. We've listened to the people in the promotional department at BC, the BC Lions, and the common thread is bring the excitement. And you know what, David? That play does just that.
Yeah. Well, no, the play does exactly that. Younger players, they bring a little bit more of the spunk, right? They bring that excitement.
Absolutely.
So I do understand that to a degree, but I also just think that, I mean, there are many players capable of making a play like this. But yeah, I think the Lions definitely understand too that in order to, I don't think they brought this guy in just because he makes beautiful catches, but I do think that they probably did see that caveat in him, right? Like, oh, imagine if we had this guy playing for us. He could be doing some incredible things.
Well, what do you want more from a defender than take the ball away from the offense?
In the end zone.
In the end zone to boot. Yeah, that's just the best case scenario for a defender making a play. That's where you want him to make it, and it was made, and it changed. Unfortunately, it only changed the complexion of the game. To your point, it's too bad that play did not have as big an impact on the game as
it should have.
Let's be clear. The defense on a whole, while that defender looked really good, the defense on the whole did not just bend, they broke and gave Hamilton the opportunity to win the game in the final minutes, which Hamilton has done a few times now this year. So it's not just on BC, but the fact is that the BC defense gave the opportunity, allowed Hamilton to do what they did. Give Hamilton total credit. But the fact is the defense has to be as good or better than the offense. And it wasn't in this game, something that you expected more in the past few years of BC, that they've been a very good defensive team. And maybe it's just that Hamilton is that good.
Yeah. I mean, to a degree, I think you're right on that. I think they've been they've gone by too in a little bit in some of their games. Like there's been a bit of luck involved as well. And I mean, BC gave them their biggest, I would say their biggest fight, right? But man, I don't like to pick apart officials and decisions that get made, because we always don't want to make it seem like the officials dictate how a game plays out. How do they not call that offside? How do they not call that offside? And Frank, you and I both know this is not the first time the refs have missed a blatant offside.
The offside is something that either team, offense or defense, or special teams defending or special teams on the offense, any advantage they get in that case, as far as offside's concerned, that tips the scales of balance, on the play. And you see it offensively and you see it defensively. How they miss an offside, that's a really good question, because they have a ref right there on the line. And I'm sure they put themselves in a position where they can see the snap or understand the snaps happening. And they're right on the line. How they miss it, I don't know. I don't know what they're looking at.
They're able to see the fingers that are over the line, or a player that's just barely lined up offside. And that's why Rourke didn't play the play in, he played it as if, okay, that we're going to get, this is going to get called a free play for us. We're going to get another chance at it. And it didn't happen. And it's just like really? Yeah, again, I'm not saying that's the reason why Hamilton won, but it certainly played a bit of a part. BC lost that game more than I think Hamilton won that game, because Hamilton was they should have been out, right? That game should have been. They had a chance to, if I'm not mistaken, they made that late score, and I'm watching the BC play defense on it, and it's just like, Bo Levi Mitchell could have done whatever he wanted to do. There was no pressure on him. That to me was the reason they lost, because you know, Nathan Rourke at least put up some points in that fourth quarter. He didn't let Hamilton get in there easily, but that last drive, the tip ball that went into that went into the hands of the receiver. It's kind of those things where I'm just like, BC should have been happy up until that point because they kept Kenny Lawler in check. They got beat by Keandre Smith. He was the target of the day, but like, if you're BC, that's more of a bad loss than a good Hamilton win, in my opinion, just because the advantage was there. Nathan Rourke, maybe could have played a little better, right? But I thought he played good enough to win. You scored 33 points, you should win, and the defense let them down.
Yeah. Either way, the simple answer, if I were to bring it to try and put it down the middle, is the defense came up short. The offense was that little bit better, and that's unfortunately the case with Hamilton and BC. The game was a really good game as far as excitement level is concerned. So we had that big play, we had the big comeback. The only disappointment is it happened in British Columbia. It happened in Vancouver. That wasn't a good feel for the hometown fans. Let's go over to the Montreal and Calgary game. Calgary at home against Montreal, lose 23-21. This game actually, even though it was played before the BC game in Hamilton, it was a lot like that BC Hamilton game where you felt as though one team got breaks that the other one didn't, and whether it be because of poor play or the other team played better, it almost looked like, I don't know, it was exciting, but you could see it coming, and you doubted it for a bit, and then you're going, no, this is Montreal's going to win this game. Doesn't matter what the score is right now.
Yeah, no, and it was another one of those. It was just another one of those games where, if you hang around enough, you put yourself in a position in the end. And I mean, give Maltos a lot of credit. That's a big time kick in a big time situation, right? How often do we see
4 for 4?
4 for 4, and he hits that
57 yards.
57. He would have been good from 60 plus.
Yeah, it's true.
I think he was actually 5 for 5 after that kick.
Was he 5 for 5? Oh, maybe that was 4 for 4, and then he got another one, I guess.
Yeah, because
the last thing I remember hearing was 4 for 4. Yeah, I'm not looking at the stats. I'm thinking of the game.
Because they had the one only one touchdown in the game. He was the reason why they won that game, really, if you think about it, right? Because we always talk about kickers, they just add in points here and there. Like, no, he got them the points they needed.
They added a yard here. It says longest 58. I could have swore I heard them say 57. I guess
it was 57 during the game, so they must have repositioned that potentially.
Again, I wasn't looking at the stats. I was looking at the game.
But here's the other thing too. Look at the fact that that game kind of changed a little bit when Vernon Adams was knocked out of the game. Yeah. Right, the complexion of the game did change with that. But again, we talked about this, Frank. Montreal's challenge right now is they got to find ways to win without their number one quarterback.
They did it.
And they did it. You can't, at this rate, if you're Montreal, you can't be upset about winning a game in that fashion.
No.
When weren't expecting to win the game at all. We came on here and I said this is now going to tell us a lot about Montreal as a team. Can they win without their starting quarterback? Because they hadn't to that point, right?
Right.
So that to me was going to be a big test. Give McLeod Bethel Thompson credit. He had to overcome an interception to win that game.
And the studio experts.
Yeah, and the studio experts. Do I think that it was a perfect game? No, I don't think it was, but it was good enough for them to win against a really good team, right? A team that the week before put a stamp on themselves as the best team in the league.
Well, how do you establish how good you are? You establish how good you are by how you win, not how you lose.
Yeah.
And we follow Toronto very closely, and they're the mirror image of Hamilton and Montreal. They find ways to lose. I don't mean this is a personal attack against the players or the organization or the team. It's just a simple fact that they've lost too many games, 5 of them, because they're incapable of maintaining 4 quarters of good football. And worse, having a good lead and not being able to hang on. What Montreal and Hamilton are doing, and Montreal did it now with McLeod Bethel-Thompson, which speaks well. I agree with you 100%. That means this team, if they can win regularly with their backup quarterback, it says a lot about the team, not just the quarterback that they have in play, no matter how highly touted their starter is.
Well, that's it, right? You have to find a way. Like, people use the Argos are dealing with an injury to their quarterback. Well, guess what? Montreal just proved that they can find a way to win without their quarterback. That's always a good measure, in my opinion. I don't like using it all the time, but I think, in my opinion, that to me speaks a lot about the character of the team.
Absolutely.
To get the job done in that situation. But it required more than just the offense to get it done. And that's what makes, in my opinion, that's what makes a strong CFL team, is if you're getting contributions from all 3 phases. Because if one phase isn't up to snuff, the trickle-down effect, you do see it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was a good game for them. Let's go back to week 8, and we've got Edmonton losing to Saskatchewan 21-18. David, Saskatchewan proved their offense, even though it didn't look that strong here, but proved their offense could withstand what Edmonton had to bring. And Edmonton looked good, but unfortunately for Edmonton, they're not doing enough. And again, this is the same thing for every team, right? It's what you do in all 4 quarters. And they're having trouble putting a game together.
I felt really bad for Cody Fajardo. Like, a really good game against his former team. And again, they put everything on his shoulders. And I understand Saskatchewan's got a really good defense, but they only ran the ball with their running backs 5 times. 5 times in this game. How many times did Cody Fajardo get sacked? 8 times.
Yep.
So Cody Fajardo got sacked more times than his running backs had the ball. So that means Cody Fajardo took more hits.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure he took more hits than his running backs. Well, Tanya Javon Leake had 2 receptions, and I think Rankin had a few. But, like, in the backfield, he took more hits than his running backs did. So what Saskatchewan did was, we're not going to let you run the ball. We're going to keep Cody Fajardo in the pocket. And look, he put up 346 yards of passing. But when you get sacked as much as they did, I also have to remember how many penalties there were. Where are the penalties? And the penalties that Edmonton took. 133 yards of penalties. How are you going to win a game when you take 8 sacks and 133 yards of penalties? Almost 200 yards between sacks, yards lost, and penalties. How do you expect
that's a good offensive night for a quarterback?
Yeah, like, how do you expect the team to win like that? 1 for 2 in the red zone. right? Another issue there. They only had one field goal all game. One field goal all game. While I think Saskatchewan had two out of the three made. If you even had one or two more of those drives end in field goals, they probably could have had a chance to win that game, right? And look, we talk a lot about how good Trevor Harris has been. Like he was good in this game again, but what Edmonton is learning is you can't be making the same mistakes over and over again because teams will punish you for it, and they got punished for it. And I hate to say rightfully so, but in a way, guess what? Rightfully so, they got punished for those mistakes. And until they learn to have a better game plan, like again, 4 points through 3 quarters is not good enough in the CFL. Yeah, they need to find ways to get, like they actually had an opportunity to make Saskatchewan sweat it out more, and they didn't. And that's disappointing. And that in a lot of ways, it's maybe also deemed inexcusable, considering where they are and where they are hoping to go.
Absolutely. The good news part of this, just to tag on to, you mentioned the penalties, and you basically referred to what I think the problem isn't the game plan, it's the execution that's not working out for them. The team they were playing, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, just a couple of years ago, Edmonton is playing the kind of football that got Saskatchewan in trouble. Lack of discipline, unable to run the ball. And they changed a few things and they made a big difference. And it will in Edmonton as well. The issue here for me, the biggest problem with Edmonton, and those penalties speak to it really. I think what we're talking here is a team that needs to be better focused, and execute better. Is this a coaching problem, or is this just a coach, adjusting to being a head coach? Because essentially, to me, that's the biggest problem this team has, is that they're not ready to play the game. I say that because, quite frankly, they went out there and they spent a lot of money and they brought in a lot of really good players and put them in positions that those disciplines aren't playing well. How can that be with the talent that they brought in? So for me, the problem is execution, and that speaks to discipline too. So the penalties are just an offshoot of them not playing the game the way they're supposed to play it. They're not staying within the game. They're trying to go outside the game. And part of the problem sometimes with penalties is you're taking a penalty because you feel you have to do something a little more because you're having a problem. Maybe a player's not getting outplayed, and you're trying to help that player. Until every player on Edmonton understands they have a responsibility and they have to be able to trust their teammate, this is what's going to happen. You're going to end up taking penalties, execution's going to falter, and losses are going to mount.
Yeah. It need maybe a little more veteran leadership needs to step up, right? The players, I think, need to step up more and kind of tell the team, like, this isn't good enough. The standard needs to be better. Yeah, like the coaching staff, look, if it's hard for a first-time head coach to have success right off the hop.
Absolutely.
Right? There are growing pains. But this is not a team of young rookies. This is a team that has some players that have been in this league for a few years. It should be better than this. And maybe there's just I don't like questioning leadership, but in a way, when your team is at the stage that it's at, maybe you got to question it a little bit.
Yeah, well, there has to be somebody taking the reins. We see it with every great team. Every great team has focal points on the field, and the focal points I'm referring to everyone is the leaders on the team. That they make it clear that they're leaders and they show what needs to be done on the field. Like, I'm not a big proponent of leaders in the locker room, to be honest with you. I'm not that sold on that being important. I think what's important is what players do on the field and showing the way on how to do it. And right now, Edmonton, maybe because they have sometimes it's an issue that you have too many guys that are very experienced, and you know that there's maybe a little not enough air on the field or in the locker room for the players to get the message out there, and there's maybe too many voices people are trying to listen to. Sometimes less is more.
Yeah, no, in a lot of ways, you don't want to overplay your hand for sure.
Overstimulate the team with too many
Yeah.
opinions and too many leaders.
Well, it's also the mix of leaders and what type of what are you looking for in terms of your your culture, right? What are you looking for in terms of your play style? If you want to be an aggressive team, guess what? Aggressive teams, they suffer from taking too many penalties, dumb penalties too, right?
You have to have a controlled aggressiveness, right?
This is where Mark Killam needs to come out and say, no, we're not. This is not going to be acceptable for us. I hate bringing the NFL always into these, but
that's okay. It started again on Thursday.
As somebody who's watches or is watching the drama that is the Dallas Cowboys, they have a new head coach this year, and he's kind of made the standard saying that if he's not tolerating shenanigans in practice. So I think there was a fight. A player threw a punch in practice. Guess what? Player got thrown out of practice. You have to set those standards. I don't hate that, because you're telling that player what you're doing is unacceptable, needs to stop. Our team can't have this stuff, and maybe that's something that the messages need to be sent like that, right? Sometimes you see players get benched. Some players get the less playing time because of something that they've done.
Discipline is a multifaceted. It isn't just about not taking penalties. It's about execution. It's about playing the game that you're supposed to be playing. There's a plan in place the team puts together. It's your job to make that plan work. Now, in fairness to the players, there has to be a plan that offers an opportunity for the players to be successful. But if success isn't there to begin with, you've got to give the plan a chance. Especially when you have a bunch of new players, the plan deserves to be at least aired out so that people can see that is it the plan that's the problem. But yeah, I think you're right. In Dallas, they had a problem with discipline. In Dallas, they didn't win. In Dallas, they've decided and the coach that they brought in has decided what you said there, and that's important. Is that we're here to do the work. We're not here to worry about me. We're here to worry about we. And a lot of times the discipline in that kind of fight that goes on is something personal. It's not about the team. It's about individuals.
Yeah.
So I like what Saskatchewan did in this game. And again, like Montreal, like Hamilton, they figured out how to win, and good teams do that. Let's move on to Winnipeg and Toronto, David. And this is probably even more than their first victory that the Argos had this time, is they played in a way that said, we're going to win this game, and it doesn't matter what you do. They found a way to win. Everything I said about the Argos that they haven't done until this game, they did it in this game, David. What do you think? Including running the ball.
Yeah, being less predictable. What better way to show you're not going to be predictable than doing a flea flicker on the first offensive play of the game that you have?
In the rain. Left-handed.
I actually, so I did talk to, I know you guys talked to Dinwiddie. I wasn't there for the game, but I talked to Ryan Dinwiddie about this the other day. I said, did the rain concern you at all? And he's like, nope. Janarian told me he was good to go. That wasn't going to be a problem for him. But correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that hands were a little slippery on that one. He didn't exactly get off the ball the way he wanted it to, and it
was short.
It was short because it slipped. Mm-hmm. Didn't get a good grip on it. But look, your team, your team is in the dumps right now, right? Your team has only one win on the season. You have nothing to lose. Go for those plays. I give them a lot of credit. They play like a team that had nothing
before, David. He's done it before. This isn't the first time. He's
Yeah.
done things. We've watched him make plays, basically say, here, come on, give me a chance to get your front foot forward.
Yeah, but I just like the fact that they play like a team that had nothing to lose, because like at this point you can't play it safe, and they have a tendency sometimes to play it safe. I don't totally disagree with it, because you can't be reckless, but let's be honest here. The Argos, I think at times, especially late in games, have been caught being a little too passive, right? They didn't play with a lot of conviction, and they did do that. They did do that. So I'm proud that they were. I wouldn't say proud, but it was good to see that they decided to play with a little more gumption in this game, because there was still I'm sure some of you were feeling it in that second half, where Winnipeg scored that touchdown late, and you're just like, it might not be over just yet. Like, let's not catch. Remember, we talked about what happened in Montreal.
Yeah. Well, this is why I said that they figured out how to win, and you got to be able to do that. You got to figure out how to win.
Yeah, you have to figure out how to win in those games, even when you're up. Right, you got to find a way to win it.
And they did, and I got to tell you, and I seem to be saying this every week. Incrementally, Arbuckle is looking better every week. It's not been like a big improvement every week, but there's always been a little bit of an improvement in his game. And when I say in his game, that's regardless of how the team has played, because the team has played some awful games, which can mask how good a quarterback is playing or how much better he's playing. He's starting to feel more comfortable as the starting quarterback. And I wonder, David, if part of that is the security he has in knowing that he's got a few more games in front of him, that he doesn't have to do everything in this game to see that he plays the next game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, look, I think that, yeah, that was his best game of the year, because he, from start to finish, he was good. And I saw more of the comfort in him running the ball and being, okay, nothing's there, I'm going to run it, right? And it just, again, teams now are like, oh, now Nick Arbuckle is going to be running. We have to be aware of that now, right? You can't just sit back and tell him, oh, yeah, throw the ball how many times you want. Right, we're going to take up all your guys. Well, now if you leave a lane for him to run, he's going to take off. And I do appreciate the fact that he did do that, because you do need your quarterback to shake things up when things aren't going right, and
keep the spy honest.
Yeah, exactly. Keep the defense honest, and like I think. I look back at the game against Hamilton, where it was really bad on paper in terms of the final score, but he played well. He gave them a chance. If their defense had made a few stops, that's a game they could have won. Right? Saskatchewan, they had a chance to win, but they let it get away from them. Right? Like, I think that's probably where they feel like things aren't falling down for them, because they've had those opportunities to win. They just blown it on a play or two. So I think of going forward, yes, we can't play scared, but we got to be smart. And I think you're starting to see more of that from Arbuckle.
And remove the panic. The coach is trying really hard to not panic. We saw him, maybe panic's the wrong word, but we saw him react. You can say it's over or under, whatever. A few games back, when he was totally frustrated with the team, and then he took it back the next game, even though they lost, he still took it back. And I agree with you 100%. We follow the Argos, we sit in the locker room, we talk to the players. So we're focused on that team. In all honesty, that's the team we're focused on, because we see them, we're up close with them. And I can say this, and with a straight face, I'll say it. Is this a straight face? That looks pretty straight. With a straight face, I can say this. With a couple of breaks here and there, their record could be inverted. Instead of 2-5, it could be 5-2. But because they haven't been able to make the odd offense, defense, special teams play that you need to win, the things that we're seeing from Hamilton, Montreal, those things that we're seeing, Saskatchewan, the teams with the great records, they're doing enough to win. And that game this week wasn't the Argos. I said they did enough to win, but it was more than just enough to win. They put themselves in a position where they weren't threatened to lose, which is something that they had problems with a couple of times so far this year, where they've had good leads and let them slip away.
Yeah, no, like they've allowed games to play because all three phases haven't been able to come together in the way that it needed to.
Absolutely.
Right? And look, your record says a lot about what your team is. They can say, we think we're a 500 team. Well, your record doesn't say right now because you're making mistakes that teams who've won titles, who are 500, don't make, right? And to me, that I think is the one thing the Argos have to learn. If you're gonna say you're a 500 team, you have to play like you're a 500 team. You have to, and I think that's where Ryan Dinwiddie was annoyed, right, or upset, because he knows this team is better than what they're showing, right? Yes, they got a lot of new players, but they got a lot of players who've been there. Right,
they've had some key injuries, not an excuse, but a factor.
Yeah, it's a factor. But yeah, as you said, a lot of teams have injuries. A lot of teams
it's what teams do with those injuries.
But they find a way to win because they don't because in the moments where they need to come up with the play and make the play, they made the play. Or if they needed to lock things down, they locked things down. Now we're about to find out how good a certain team is going to be without their best player. First show of it, not very good, Frank.
We get a bonus here and a good segue on you talking about what players what a team does when they get their players back and things work out. That's the definitive comment that I'll make about the Ottawa Red Blacks being visited by Calgary. A game that, even though Calgary was playing with a backup quarterback, I think a lot of people thought Calgary were going to take this. The reverse was true. And Ottawa, how I described Toronto's victory, exactly the same for Ottawa. They took the lead. They didn't do anything to let Calgary have a chance. Even when Calgary looked like they were going to make something happen, boom, they snatched any opportunity in an interception and took this game home. Ottawa looked really good. Their quarterback looked really good. And David, the most important thing I can say, if you're an Ottawa Red Blacks fan, the team didn't depend on the quarterback as much as they've had to depend on them in the recent past. The rest of the team did their share of work.
I just kind of think that when you're looking at a team that has been off to, like, I said that I was surprised about Calgary because I wasn't expecting it. Then I was starting to think, okay, maybe this team is something. Then what did I say, Frank, last week?
Yeah, it's.
Let's see how good they are when they don't have their best player. And a team that doesn't have their best player, maybe they've been playing above their weight class because they've had the confidence in the player that's leading them. Well, that didn't look like a very confident team against Ottawa.
Worst defensive effort they've had all year.
And it wasn't even like, if you really think about it, worst defensive effort, but not a terrible game for that defense considering their quarterback gave opportunities to that other team. But yeah, I do think.
Well, let me be clear. Oh, geez. I just realized I heard what I said there and what it sounded like. It was the difference between how the defensive has played, which was over the moon, to this. The bar was so high for me to be satisfied with their defense. I've said what what I meant. There's what I mean.
I do think it was a poor defensive effort because
By their new standard,
by their standard
established.
But guess what? It wouldn't have mattered what the defense did.
No,
like if we're
unless
being
they
honest
got
here,
a couple
too, Frank,
interceptions for touchdowns,
right? 11 points ain't gonna win you many football games. Your defense can't. Their defense has allowed just 10 points in a game, so maybe they could have had that magic.
Average of 9 all year, or 11. Is it something like that? They're barely in the double digits in being scored against. So 31's a big clip,
31's a bit. That's their worst. I would say it's the worst defensive output that they've had all year. But it's also that offense looks, and it's funny, Frank. Who are the 2 losses that Calgary has had against this year?
Oh no, Ottawa.
How in the world can Ottawa not beat any of these other teams? But Calgary, we got their number. Both times I said, okay, once maybe it was a bit fluky because of the weather, but twice. Now they didn't have Vernon Adams play. I think that's a different story. Vernon Adams
they had a lot of players coming back too, David. They had some defenders coming back. They had an opportunity here. They were under the gun here. Ottawa, this game, I don't know if you want to call it a must-win game, but it definitely was a win they needed. I mean, must win? Yeah, maybe it was because they got it. They've got 2 teams ahead of them are like 5-2, and now you've got Toronto that has figured out how to win. And because we're talking about week 9 right now, a game in week 9, we still have the rest of week 9: Toronto, Winnipeg, Hamilton, Edmonton, Saskatchewan, Montreal. Week 10 has Toronto against Ottawa, and so what Toronto does against Winnipeg is going to put a lot of pressure on Ottawa in that next game. The East Division is now, it's dead serious because now we have lines have been drawn and teams can't fall. Toronto and Ottawa can't afford to go on a losing streak. They've gone on long enough with that.
I do think there is a bit of that. Yeah, for sure.
And you have the Western Division has a team in 4th place there that's much better than them, points wise.
Yeah, right. So, we talk like right now, Toronto and Ottawa are trying to beat the crossover team,
and they're 2 games behind them.
2 games behind them, right? So, I do think that yes, I do think that there is a little bit of the they need to be like Calgary. Am I concerned about them? Maybe just a tad, just because of the way, like how poor the offense looked, and we don't know what Vernon Adams' long-term situation is. But am I totally going to look at this game and say Ottawa is going to turn things around? They win a game, and then they lose a bunch. So they need to prove to me that it's more than just a one and done sort of situation for them.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I believe in them. I think Ottawa has turned a corner, not to be battling for first, and I don't even think battling for second, but they've turned a corner where they and their fans should believe that this team now is in a fight for a playoff spot. Something that before this game you couldn't say, or you couldn't say with a straight face. So, and the same thing's true for the Argonauts. I mean, if they can beat Winnipeg again, now the bottom 2 in the Eastern Division are going toe to toe. Toronto isn't challenging first or second just yet, but there are games to be played. You play most of your games against the East Division, so they can control what happens going into the playoffs. And teams that aren't playing well are going to have to figure it out. So for this week, I'll give credit to Ottawa for figuring it out for this week. We'll see what happens next week.
Yeah, next week's again. We're getting to the crucial point of the season, right? We talked about Labor Day is kind of the time where teams show what they are. So as good as Calgary has been, they got to maintain that now. Like I'm preparing to do my CFL power rankings for the halfway point, and Calgary was going to be my top team, but maybe Saskatchewan kind of stays in the picture a bit more. I got to see how Calgary bounces back, and unfortunately, I get one more chance for Calgary to bounce back. But the thing is, they're on a bye this week, so I have to wait until. And maybe that's it too, Frank. Is in them and BC have played 8 games, right? They played a lot of football. Some teams haven't even played all 9 games. They haven't even played some. I look at Winnipeg; they've only played 6 games. Edmonton's only played 6 games. So, I'm curious to see what happens when Calgary comes back and if they can come back strong.
Absolutely, and Ottawa now, because of this first game this week, they played 8 as well. So it's going to be an interesting season, and it's working out really well for a few teams that a lot of fan bases were hoping for. Calgary, Hamilton, these Montreal, not so much, because they did win the Grey Cup a couple of years ago, but this year they're looking really good. And of course, the Edmonton and BC continue to disappoint their fan bases. I kind of think that both those teams need to figure something out. And the hard part for me when it comes to BC, since you brought up the point of power rankings, BC's not playing well with their number 1 quarterback. Other teams have excuses. BC and Edmonton are 2 teams that have their number 1 quarterbacks available to them, and it's not working with them, which, speaks to, the excuse that we make for teams that don't have their starting quarterback.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's concerning for me for those 2 franchises.
I don't think you're wrong on that. I believe it. I think that's what's been disappointing with me with BC is they don't have the excuses the other teams have. They don't have that big injury that's that you can give them a bit of a I wouldn't say excuse, but you can give them some slack, cut them some slack.
Right.
You can't cut them slack right now. Nathan Rourke, they made the bet, right? Nathan Rourke, they chose him over Vernon Adams. They said, this guy is the guy for us. Well, right now, it started off okay, but the last few weeks, it hasn't looked very rosy for them. So, if I'm BC, there's got to be that conversation of, okay, how do we get more out of our guys right now, because it's just not working.
Yeah, wow. Rourke, I'm baffled. I really am. I'm baffled. For him to, is it him? Is it the receivers he has? Is it the offensive line? Is it the schemes that they have going? I know he has a new offensive coordinator, somebody to get used to. I get that, right? So, maybe that's it too. There's a symbiosis that needs to develop. A lot of times, though, that symbiosis is natural. And, how many times have we seen a quarterback come onto a team and be like Kelly? He came into Toronto, Miller and him hit it off right off the bat, and things went great for him. He was handed the ball at the Grey Cup, and he only played, the last quarter, most of it anyway, and turned the team around. So, what is coaching? How much does coaching have to say about how good a quarterback plays? I'm concerned that Rourke's confidence level isn't where it should be. And watching him play, he seems more hesitant than I remember him 3 years back. He was more instantaneous. He made quicker decisions, and maybe that's what it is he needs to make quicker decisions.
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of doubt, a little second guessing. That could very well be it. But yeah, I safe to say, maybe the expectations were too high. Maybe he's got to build himself back up a little bit. I do think it's been disappointing, and I expect more from Nathan. And you know what? I hope Nathan Rourke sees that as a good thing, though. I hope he doesn't see that as an unfair thing being put on him. But I don't think it should be the case.
An MBT reaction.
Yeah, I know you don't want that.
You don't want an MBT reaction.
No, I just think that Nathan Rourke needs to understand that there is he had established himself as the guy, right? The guy that was viewed as at one point the face of the league, right?
Absolutely.
And he's got. I think maybe this what he's going through right now, maybe it'll humble him a little bit.
Well, he's going to have to learn to negotiate it. Like every player has challenges. It's how they negotiate the challenges. And I use the word negotiate because it's not just he doesn't have total control over it, and he also it's part of convincing himself what he needs to do and be convinced it's the right thing to do. Right now, it's not working for him the way he was accustomed to in his first run in the Canadian Football League in the BC Lions. But I believe there's an opportunity there with the head coach, basically juggling all the balls that he's never juggled before. He's got some adjustments to make. The quarterback fits into those adjustments, and we'll see if watching the games. What I've said about Arbuckle, it wouldn't be nice to see Rourke trending in a good direction consistently, right? Which is he's nowhere near his problem isn't the same as Ford's. The problem with Ford was that he was erratic. There was no trend line going in one direction. It was bouncing back and forth, and that unpredictability is not a good thing because it speaks to an inability to make create your own foundation of how you're going to play, and every game set down your foundation and build on that foundation. And then every week build on what you built on that foundation. This is what Arbuckle's done. This is not what Ford's been able to do. And somewhat the same way, Rourke is in that same boat where he hasn't built a foundation for his game moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I don't know. I haven't really heard a lot of what Nathan Rourke has had to say about his play. Actually, he talked about starting fast in the last game, right?
Yeah.
There was the injury too that maybe has impacted him a little bit, right? He has to. I think what he also needs to do. Consistency needs to be there, but he needs to be a goldfish. If something doesn't go right, flush it. Right? I love sometimes that saying. Be like a goldfish and flush it. Forget about it.
The other reason they say that is because a goldfish has a very small brain. It doesn't have much to think about.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? They've got quarterbacks have to be like that. If a quarterback makes a mistake, if they dwell on it, they're in trouble. Because sometimes you just can't. You just can't expect yourselves to, dwell on your mistakes because sometimes
what you're saying is depend on your ability, on your natural God-given ability. Mm-hmm. Let it breathe, right? Don't choke it. Right. And that's part of, growing as a quarterback. And that's what you mean by being a goldfish. Right. Don't let the negative stuff affect how you play. Right. You need to always that foundation I'm talking about. The foundation is the thing that you rely on. Right. It's the thing you build your game on, your natural ability, whatever it is, the plan that you've got your go-to. Like look how many quarterbacks they come to the Canadian Football League, and one of the things they always talk about they like so much is the RPO, the run pass option. Once you get used to that, you can be successful as a quarterback in the Canadian Football League because you have to think and you have to think fast. And that's the thing about the Canadian Football League. You got to do it fast.
Yeah, they have to, you do. You have to set we've seen a great comeback efforts throughout the years, but we've also seen that when you establish your game early on, it lends yourself pretty good. It lends yourself pretty good for the rest of the game, because you've already established the way you want to play, and the other team has to adjust and has struggled to adjust.
Absolutely.
Right. So I do think there is a little bit of that, and teams need players to be, again, more like goldfish and just forget the mistakes. Just don't have the small brain like a goldfish, though.
There you go. Well, revert to the foundation that is your game. Revert to it. Depend on it. Feet planted firmly on it. And this season, we to wrap things up, this season we'll repeat. Hamilton, Montreal are leading the East. Saskatchewan and Calgary are leading the West. We've waited for a few years now to have Winnipeg drop out of that picture. They're out of it now. They're out of that picture right now, but they're still playing well enough. They're playing 500. So how they play against the Argos this week is going to say a lot about them as well. And Toronto and Ottawa, like BC and Edmonton, they got some work to do. That's where we are so far this season.
A lot of teams have a lot of work to do, which that's why I see you got to play the whole season.
Absolutely. And, get those injuries out of the way.
Yeah, let's try to keep our starting quarterbacks on the field.
There you go. We'll allow that to be the last word on CFL talk today. We snuck in a little NFL talk with a certain team known as the Dallas Cowboys. Coincidentally, yes, that's David's favorite team. So he figured out a way to sneak that in.
Making it harder and harder every week, Frank.
But a team that he needs to worry about, the Detroit Lions played yesterday. So NFL season's underway as well. We still have some Thursday games in the Canadian Football League, but that'll begin to shrink when TSN has their Thursday night football. That'll be coming back. So everyone, thank you for being here, David, as usual. And for the rest of you that have watched, thank you for watching. Always look forward to creating this kind of content. The Canadian Football League is a big interest to David and I hope we help you to spark that interest a little more than maybe you had it before you started watching the show. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.